Hey, what's going on, everyone? Today we have the tier list or patch 17.17, which is going to be the last patch for TFT for set 17. So we got some wacky, crazy stuff going on right now. Right now, the best comp by far is the 5 Anima comp. You essentially just get a gold augment worth of stats every single round. Very good if you can ever get it. In the A tier, there's still some stuff that's playable. Stargazer Xayah, they made Vex a Stargazer, but we'll get more into that later. Nova Akali, this is a new comp that we just added. And then we have Shepherd Leblanc, Space Groove, Brawler Yi, Vanguard Fast 9, 2 Tanky Samira, Mecha, and Vex in the A tier. So we're going to go over some of those. We're going to be spending a little bit more time on the new comps. Everything else probably put on hold for a bit. Not that it's impossible to play, but you probably just want to play these top comps, like mainly just try to go for some of the weird stuff if you're doing some sort of last minute climb. But let's go on with the 5 Anima comp to start off with. So this one's very funny because, okay, so they changed the way Anima works. It used to be 3 and 6 as a trait breakpoints, but now they moved it into 3 and 5. And you might be wondering what makes it so good. So what makes it so good is if you get the Anima emblem, it makes this comp absolutely astronomically OP because you do not need Fiora to start getting 5 Anima. What you need instead is 4 Anima. So you need Briar, Illaoi, Aurora, and Jinx. All those are 1, 2, and 3 cost characters. So with the Anima emblem, you could realistically get to 5 Anima in like stage 3. I mean, if you're extremely lucky, you might even be able to get it stage 2. I haven't seen that happen yet, but I've definitely seen it in stage 3. So without the emblem, you need Fiora, who's a legendary unit, which is pretty hard to get. So what ends up happening is that you could get 5 Anima in stage 3 with the emblem and just start farming infinite type of rewards, and like you just can't, no other comp can compete with that, you know? But yeah, you're pretty much just able to win the game if you can find 5 Anima before stage 4, and yeah, it gets approximately a gold augment's worth of stuff during a turn. And one augment that's really good with this is called Flexible. Flexible is just the augment that gives random emblems, and oftentimes it does give you the Anima one because you can't craft Anima, so you have to get it from these random emblem things. So that's the only tricky part about it. You have to kind of luck into this comp. But yeah, pretty much this comp is a rarity because it's described as you win the game on stage 3. Normally when I say that, I'm saying it as like a figure of speech or something like that. In this case, it's like, no, you win on game 3 unless like 5 other people have it, you know? Worst case, what you can do when you are going for this is go for like a Jinx reroll comp or something built around Aurora or Illaoi. But ideally, you just play with the emblem or an extremely early Fiora and just play anything after that. Also, the board is cheap and you just throw whatever you want in there after that. Like you just mix and match some random synergy. So we could play a little game right now, go on the team builder. So right now this board here is like just some generic thing that got whipped up. But if we take out all the non-Anima units, we could build pretty much whatever you want. So, and you just look at the left. What trades can you run with this? Well, you obviously want to play 4 or 5 cost champions with this. And you want to fill out some sort of like general synergies as well. So that's why stuff like Akali is really good because she's always going to be played with Fiora and they're both like Marauders. And Akali with Nova gives you free critical strike chance. So you could type in like Nova here and play literally any of these. Like obviously Kindred goes with the Jinx, but let's say you don't have items for that. You could play stuff like Maokai or even like Aatrox. You could do like an Aatrox Shen. That way you get the armor penetration from your Aatrox, and then yeah, you could still play legendaries with Shen. So how many units do we have here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, -1 because we have an extra Anima unit in that we can take out. So after that, we could look at something else. Maybe you could play something like a Riven. Riven can give you Rogue and Timebreaker because Shen is also a Timebreaker now. And then after that, maybe you look down here, you could play something like a Voyager or a Vanguard, you know? So you could play something like a Blitzcrank. So that's kind of how you navigate this. You could pretty much play anything because you have so many traits that you could overlap with. But I'd say like build around Akali and just play some other random Nova unit and go from there. The game gets a lot easier if you have a 3-star Illaoi, which sometimes you just get randomly because that takes care of your tank line. The reason why I like this Maokai plus Tahm Kench combo is because it's just a nice little way to get a good front line. But you could also play like Nunu because Illaoi plus the Nunu gives Vanguard and you have a 2-star Nunu that could serve as a tank as well. But yeah, just make sure you have a tank because all your damage is pretty much taken care of. But pretty much try to get the Anima emblem early if you can from one of those random augments. You're not going to get it all the time, but if you do, what you want to do is prepare for your roll down on stage 3-2 to hit 5 Anima. And if you hit it, GG. And if not, you could always get it a bit later. In stage 4, you just play the 5 Anima plus flex around whatever emblems you get, because you might have gotten multiple of them when you tried to get the Anima emblem, or just play around the random synergies that you could fill out on your team, because I only went through the 4 and 5 cost synergies. You definitely need to go through the 2 and 3 costs during stage 4 before you get those more expensive ones. After that, in stage 5, you go level 9, play 5 costs, and pretty much any combo of units will win the game if you're the only one with 5 Anima, because you've just been farming it the whole game. But I do have this long tip section here on bunnymuffins.lol/meta, where you can get access to this comp and pretty much everything else we're going to be covering as a reference guide for free. But let's go into the next comp, which is going to be the Stargazer Xayah comp. This one, I'd say, is the best default comp. By the way, you don't need to run Vex, because oftentimes the items you build for Xayah don't really transfer into Vex that easily. It's really only the Rage Blade if you build it, but if you build a lot of Krakens, Xayah is pretty much the only one that can use Kraken in this comp. But if you get extra items, you easily could add in a Vex later on. But pretty much, even though Vex is a Stargazer, she hasn't really changed that much. You just play her in the regular Fast 9 with Nunu. And then if you want, you could add in a Jax or something to fill out that trait. But she doesn't really need it because Vex was strong enough on her own already. But in this specific comp, you want to just have double Kraken on Xayah at all times. This is going to be if you want to hard force a comp every single game, and if you have a lot of bows, you could easily do this. And also, there are 2 different versions. There's the Rammus version and the standard version, but standard probably going to be the one you're going to be playing most of the time. Again, all you really need for this comp is bows, so every time you go into a god round, just take a bow and don't look back. After that, you want to do full tank items on your Tahm Kench and the mana items on the Nunu. And then if you have extra leftover items, Blitzcrank or Jhin are going to be the options to go to for that. On this other Rammus version, tank items on Rammus, mana items on Nunu, and then same thing for the backline. For the flex items, it's going to be Bard or Jhin. But you pretty much want to play this if you have a tempo 80 item opener, specifically the attack speed items, because that's what Xayah likes. And then Serpent, Boar, or Altar Stargazer constellation going to be the preferred there. But it's just standard fast 8. Nothing too crazy. Just go to level 8, roll down 40-ish gold. You could get away with 30 sometimes also. Even 20, if you have a lot of the units beforehand, you know how sometimes you randomly hit a Xayah in stage 3? If you have that scenario happen, then yeah, you can get away with rolling less gold. But generally you want around 30 to 40 at least whenever you do a fast 8 roll down. But pretty simple comp there, just standard fast 8. Next comp up we have is the Nova Akali comp. This one's going to be a Jax and Akali reroll. Pretty interesting comp. It's kind of new, but it works out pretty nicely if you get a lot of swords. Remember, Akali automatically crits because she gets precision for herself from the Nova trait. So that way you want to stack up as many attack damage stats as you can through the items. On Jax, he likes having the solo tank item, so Stone Plate going to be really good. And then third tank item doesn't really matter that much. But in the backline, you have Kindred as your secondary carry. But this is pretty much kind of like a stallish comp, not too much like a burst comp. That's why you want the Hextech Gunblade. So you just want tons of AD and Deathblade on her, and then a bunch of tank items for either Jax or Morgana. Ideally Jax though, since you're doing a 2-cost reroll. Lastly, you want to have 5 Nova as soon as possible. That way you get the Nova Strike selector and put that on Akali. The difference between 2 and 5 Nova obviously is going to be astronomical, because as soon as you unlock that, Akali gets a bit better. But pretty much play this comp only when your items allow for it. You need a lot of swords. Most of the damage comes from Akali's Nova Strike, which deals damage over time, and the ability also has really high damage ratios, but it can be a little bit slow. So pretty much Gunblade's required because it just gets a ton of value in this comp, and the comp is potentially S tier if you set it up correctly, but D tier if you play it from the wrong spots. So very hit or miss, be careful when playing this. But luckily, I got you. The main indication you can play for Akali 3 is going to be how easily you can assemble Gunblade plus 1 heavy AD item and 1 multiplier item, such as Striker's Flail, which gives damage amplification and some crit. So pretty much if you have some artifact item or something like that, or some reason to go for Akali, such as the item stuff we talked about before, you can consider going for her. Otherwise, play Akali for tempo and then pivot into something else that uses those items. Stage 3-1 is the earliest you should commit to the comp, because unless you found some super condition, you probably shouldn't go for this. And if you do commit to this, roll on stage 3-2 to stabilize if necessary. After that, find a time to all in, put in 5 Nova, Akali 3, stuff like that. After that, artifacts are really good in the comp. Jax takes any tank artifact, and Akali does pretty well with Prowler's Claw, Silvermere Dawn, Death's Defiance, and Gold Collector. And pretty much any artifact that provides AD can replace Deathblade, and you could even find some stuff to replace Striker's Flail as well. If you ever do get a Nova emblem, it does become a lot better because you can drop Caitlyn in the late game, and it gets you to 5 Nova much quicker since you don't need Kindred, because sometimes Kindred is hard to get because she's a 4 cost. Lastly, if you don't get Jax 3, Morgana 2 can suffice. So in the games where you find Akali 3 like instantly, but you only have like 2 copies of Jax, then yeah, you could go for a Morgana instead, and just go for more of the regular tank items instead of the Gargoyle Stoneplate. But we have the full item list down here if you want. But yeah, pretty solid comp. Very fun to try. Definitely try it out at least once since we haven't really played too much reroll Akali in this set. Next up we have is LeBlanc Flex. We got a couple of different builds here. We got Morgana, Vanguard, and Shepherd. Morgana, still like one of the best 4 costs in the game right now, but pretty much LeBlanc is a pretty good unit to pair her up with because you just have a solid tank, so you want some Rage Blade stacker in the back. You could run her with secondary carries such as like Karma. Karma's going to be the main go-to because she is going to be just providing a lot of complementary synergies whenever you play this comp, namely like you could fit Darkstar in pretty easily with Vanguards through Mordekaiser, or you want to fit in Shepherd in the other cases with Lissandra, so that's kind of why you want to keep Karma into the comp. Also, she gives Voyager with Meepsie. Meepsie is another Shepherd, so like, yeah, Karma just fits really well with Shepherds, and you get like 2 of them for free with Karma. But for LeBlanc, just Rage Blade, AP, Spell Crit, gonna be the standard builds. For your secondary carry, in Karma, just put the utility items on her. You could also put them on Sona if you get her. That's just the Void Staff Morello. And then for frontline, like obviously, I like Morgana, just build regular tank items on her. You don't really care too much which. Crown Guard, I would say, is her best item, but don't like greed too much for that because you do need the rods for all your LeBlanc items. For Nunu, just get the mana items on him, and yeah, you're going to be pretty much good to go from there. This is just standard fast 8 comp. For Arbiter, get AP or attack speed generating Arbiter. And then ideally you get a lot of items for this comp because you play a bunch of good units. Also, if you get Shepherd Emblem, it definitely does help the comp out a ton because 7 Shepherd definitely is a power spike, but it's by no means necessary whenever you play this. Next build up we have is going to be Space Groove. Space Groove's really fun because I just love Riven so much. Like, you guys know that already. Her with that emblem, I think it's like her best emblem by far. Better than like her in the Darkstar or the Meeple comps easily. And yeah, she just becomes a sustained monster with the Space Groove emblem. You could get to 7 Space Groove if you're able to get like the super late levels, but pretty much in this comp, you just have Nami as your main carry, double Nashers JG for her, main tank going to be Nunu or Tahm Kench, depending on what version you're playing or what you're fitting in or who you hit 2-star first. And then 2 secondary carries are going to be either Riven or Blitzcrank. So Blitzcrank's great at holding utility items because he does hit a lot of units. And like he's pretty durable since he has his passive, which kind of respawns him. So you're pretty much always going to have those utility effects up when you put it on Blitzcrank. And then Riven just gets the Space Group emblem plus any leftover items because she can play with literally anything. I hope they add more units like Riven in future sets because I think she's very fun. Actually, they are. In the next set, if you watch my set 18 preview, it's in my previous video. If you go to the adapters section, they kind of have like a whole trait built around units kind of like Riven. So I think that was pretty cool. But yeah, as for everything else, it's just going to be fast 8 for this standard leveling because you need like 4 different 4 costs in this 5 Space Group version. And then if you get the emblem, that's pretty much the only reason why I would play this. It's not impossible to play it without the emblem, but it definitely does make it a lot better. I think it becomes kind of like S tier with it. But yeah, nothing's changed too much about this comp. Let's move on into the next one, which is Brawler Yi. Still very solid option out there. He got small buffs here. His requirements are still the same though. You want the Edge and Knight plus the Giant Slayer on him just to pierce through a lot of the tanks, and Edge and Knight is just mandatory on him. After that, just 4 brawlers. Tahm Kench going to be the main tank holder, but he's going to be holding utility items, and then Kindred in the back line. If you get Marauder or Brawler emblem, Brawler's incredibly good on Yi, and then if you get Marauder emblem, you could add in Fiora very easily for 6 Marauder, and she is going to be a great secondary carry. You do prefer having like the AD Psionic items, but if you have one of the other ones, it's not the end of the world. If you get a good Yi start, like some games you just get Yi early, you could just play him anyways, and just accept that you're not going to do that well that game, but you could still farm top forwards easily if you get all the units without having to roll too much. So despite having a bad Psionic item, it's still a viable comp. But pretty much like you want to tempo into this comp. That's another thing. You don't want to be playing this comp from like a lose streak. That's kind of how a lot of melee carries work. Like if you lose streak with a melee carry, you definitely get outscaled in like the super late game. But in the early game, melee carries are really good because sometimes they can act as both tanks and DPS at the same time. But obviously as teams get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, it's harder and harder to do that. Next build up we have is the Vanguard Fast 9. Obviously like Vex got changed a bit, but her build hasn't really changed. You kind of just play her the same way, honestly. Like, you don't really care that much about the Stargazer buff. If you really want to, you could add in a Jax to these builds. Or if you're playing Jhin in your Fast 9, you could add in a Xayah. But a lot of the comps out there, like, you don't really need to change too much because, like, Vex was already good on her own. She's mainly good because she's just a great Rageblade user, so you just need a bunch of tanks up there to help her out. But if you have, like, Shen in there, you could just do, like, Vex plus Jax and Shen with Nunu and Blitzcrank. But I would say it's optional. You don't, like, have to do it, but it is, like, a nice little bonus for her. Because honestly, is 3 Stargazer gonna, like, carry your comp compared to just having everything 2-star? Probably not, but it definitely is an added bonus. But yeah, Fast 9's still pretty tricky because you need, like, lots of HP. You need to be going on big win streaks. But a lot of people ask me, what do I play if I have, like, full win streak until stage 4 and then they just slowly bleed out because they try to go for some comp or they try to greed improperly? But the best thing to do whenever you are in those situations is to just go Fast 9, just because a lot of the units are going to be uncontested because most people are playing like 4-cost comps or like some reroll. And if you greed your gold and don't roll, you can't go for a 4-cost comp because all the units are going to be taken by the time you roll. So even though you are a higher level, it's still going to be very difficult to find them. But if you go level 9 and go for the legendaries, not a lot of people are going to have those. So you get those access for free, which is why you want to do that when you go on a super win streak. But yeah, pretty much you need like a lot of health and a lot of gold to go for this. So only go Fast 9 in those games where you're getting a little bit lucky. Next comp up, we have this Samira Reroll. So it's not that 2 Tanky got nerfed. It did not get nerfed at all in the recent patch, but there's just a lot of other better stuff to play out there. That's why I kind of dropped Samira Reroll down a little bit, but still very good with the 2 Tanky augment. It might become like S tier still with this, but the regular comp is probably just regular A tier still. But it might be like low S tier, maybe like S minus, you know? And especially with the Anima players out there, a lot of times when you play Samira, you like lose streaked a lot because you're like, oh, I'm going for a reroll comp. Let me maximize my econ. It's easier to get swords if you're lose streaking as well because you get component anvils instead of random components. And yeah, a lot of times when you play reroll, you do a lose streak, and then especially with 3 costs, it's so hard to get 3-star 3 costs, especially without an econ augment because you took 2 Tanky instead of something else. A lot of times you end up with like 1 or 2 health by the time you hit your 3 stars, and then you face the Anima guy twice, and then you just lose the game, you know? Not saying this happens all the time, but it happens enough where I feel like that's one reason to kind of drop this down a little bit. Because whenever you play like those like comps that really play to the edge, you try to like squeeze out every ounce of life that you have in your game, punished a lot by those like fortune cash out players. So you gotta be a little bit careful. Obviously, if no one's doing it, then you're fine. But yeah, there's always gonna be some like super high roller that can punish you if you do that. So just be a little bit careful when attempting that. But nothing's really changed too much about this comp. Like Ornn main tank, Samira main damage dealer, obviously, and then play duplicate copies of them, and then just play 5 Space Groove, level up, and then add in the extra traits such as Sniper and Bastion, and that's, yeah, pretty much going to be the comp from there. Next build up we have is 6 Mecha. Mecha's still pretty fun to play around with. I really only play it if I get something like Reinforcement or if I have some duplicators where I can get the 2-star mechs very easily. But if you ever get best in slot Mighty Mech, this is the time to go for the comp as well. Double Stoneplate plus Steric's going to be ideal, but like Stoneplate's probably the most important. If you have at least one of them in the early game, you can think about going for this comp. Just because, yeah, the Mighty Meg is going to be the solo tank, so like Stoneplate going to be super good on him, and he counts as 2 units, so you just want him as giant as possible, and Stoneplate is definitely one way to do that. In the backline, Ezreal going to be the main carry, obviously, just regular AP on him, just full crit. No mana items needed on Ezreal, which is nice. But the Rabadons, I'd say, is like the most crucial item on him, just because he really benefits from a lot of AP. If you ever get Urgot 3-star, he's a really nice secondary carry. Him with IE, he just one-taps a lot of units a lot of times. And then for the rest of your build, like Tahm Kench, Karma, these just fill in random traits for your team. Fiora, Mordekaiser, that just lines up very nicely with what you're playing. They're by no means like mandatory by any means, but I'd say the only one you really need is going to be Karma to give you Voyager for your mecha. But apart from that, like you could play a bunch of random stuff in these extra slots. I've even seen some people just play with 4 mecha and take out the Urgot and then play other units instead. All these are viable options, but I'd say like if you can, just stick to the standard one that you see here. Other things to take a note of is artifacts and radiant items are also really good in this comp because you just concentrate the power into the Mighty Mech or the Ezreal, and they just become even more powerful after that because they make more use out of those items because they take up 2 unit slots. But yeah, just fast 8 for this. You're pretty much just looking for 4 costs. Don't need to worry about the higher levels because Fiora is not a main carry of this comp. She's just a complementary piece to give Marauder to Urgot and not that important at all. Next build up we have is Vex Fast 9. This one is going to be, again, just similar to the other Vanguard Fast 9, but just a little bit different. It's really good if you get Graves early. I'd say if you get an early Graves, and he is much better right now because his costs are reduced, gets his upgrades for a lot cheaper now. So it's not that he gets more powerful. It's just that when you play him, you can just afford to complement him a bit better because all his upgrades are a lot cheaper. But for Graves, I still like the melee one. You just do the QSS AD build. Obviously, he gets precision already from Akali in this comp from the Nova trait. So yeah, just QSS makes a lot of sense, gives him a lot of uptime, and yeah, he will eventually just run over a lot of people. And he also gets like Omnivamp from his upgrades already and like some defensive capabilities. That's why you don't really need stuff like Bloodthirster or things like that to really make him shine. Though they're not like bad items. You could still build them on him. I just prefer going full damage on him and getting his defensive stuff from his upgrades. But apart from that, like just find some 4-cost tank. It could be Nunu with the mana items. Could be Morgana. Could even be Tahm Kench. You could run like Maokai, Tahm Kench in this build instead of the Aatrox, for example, or just like run it with the Aatrox. You could take out Nunu and Morgana here, or like Nunu and Blitzcrank. It's a cheaper version of the build, so if you don't have that much gold when you're going fast 9, you could easily stabilize with that before you get into this final board. So that's one nice thing to note there. But yeah, that's pretty much all the comps I have for this week. Like you could obviously still play around with the B tier comps. They're still solid. Like some of them are still pretty viable. You could check that out on the website, bunnymuffins.lol, but don't forget, 5 Anima, that's what you really want. And yeah, you're not going to get it every game. If you want to just like default 1 or 2 comps, like I'd say like Stargazer Xayah, you just need a lot of bows, or like maybe Shepherd Leblanc are like pretty hard forceable, or even like Brawler Yi. Brawler Yi probably has the least requirements out of all of these. You could probably get away with just playing a bunch of those. But yeah, overall, like let me know what you thought about set 17. I thought it was like an okay set. Wasn't anything like too crazy, but I don't think it's like as bad as people were saying. It could have been better, but the one thing about set 17 was that it was like pretty balanced throughout most of the set. So I think that's why it felt a little different from other things, because other sets you have like one comp that's like super broken at OP every single patch and you have to like switch to it and learn it every single time. It depends what type of player you are. If you like doing that, then you like the other sets. If you like more stability, then set 17 is there for you. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I'll be coming out with a bunch of stuff for set 18 once it comes out, as this is the last patch for set 17. So I hope to see you all there, and let me know what type of videos you want to see from me in the future, because I might be changing things up a little bit for next set. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this, and I'll see you all in the next one.